Okay, we're live. Welcome everyone to another edition of the Defiant Weekly Recap. Thank you for joining us. We have Ed Robinson, our contributing editor, Owen and Alex, our staff reporters here. We'll be going over all the major news and stories in DeFi and crypto this week. Some of the highlights, I guess the biggest story this week was Coinbase launching its own layer 2 called Base. It's an optimistic roll-up layer 2. So even more competition coming into the mix. We have Blur versus OpenSea, the battle for dominance in the NFT trading space, and tons of other NFT news, issuing of NFTs on Bitcoin picking up, Uniswap doing NFT trading, questions around whether NFTs on for Top Shots on Dapper Labs are securities, and a lot more. So let's get started with our biggest story, Coinbase jumping into the Ethereum scaling race. And Alex, you had this story, so why don't you take us through it?
Yeah, and it's very straightforward. Coinbase, the largest crypto exchange in the United States, is building a layer 2 blockchain, one of several companies that are trying to help Ethereum scale. Ethereum's future is, the popular term is roll-up centric. So the idea is that for Ethereum to actually become a useful tool for not just tens of thousands or millions of people, but for billions of people, to become new financial rails and the kind of the software that underlies our decentralized future, it has to get better. It has to get cheaper. It has to get faster. And the most promising way to do that is to have these other companies build blockchains on top of Ethereum that kind of batch and compress transactions. So Coinbase is joining that effort. It's not building this from scratch, though. I think the most interesting thing about this announcement is that it's going to be using existing technology. So the second largest existing layer 2 blockchain, Optimism, they have a code base that they've made open source. The hope is that people would copy and tweak and improve on it. And Coinbase is doing just that, right? So they're using Optimism's code base to build their own competing blockchain. They're calling it Base. And it's a really interesting effort because Coinbase already has so many users, right? I think the estimate is more than 100 million people have a Coinbase account or have used Coinbase in some way. And so if this becomes a kind of way for them to move from the world of centralized finance, Coinbase is really, it's a traditional company. It's centralized. There's nothing particularly new about that. But if Coinbase can kind of move its customers toward transacting on chain in a decentralized, permissionless way, that could be a big win for the real vision of what Ethereum should be. A platform where people transact peer to peer without middlemen.
And remember that Coinbase does have a non-custodial wallet as well. So, that could also fit into this more decentralized roadmap. So Coinbase went with Optimism, and I think they have a pretty deep partnership, right, where some of the fees will flow to OP token holders, or how does that work?
Yeah, so the collaboration is twofold, or the partnership. One part is that Coinbase is going to become another contributor to that underlying code base, the OP stack. So that technology that Optimism built, that Coinbase is now using, they're going to help build it out to make it better, and they're going to be working closely together to do that. The second part is that, like other existing layer 2 blockchains, revenue will come from a percentage of the fees that are charged with every transaction. So Coinbase has said that it's going to route a certain percentage of that revenue to Optimism's grants program. So a big kind of like a motivating philosophy for Optimism is that companies that are making money in this space should be finding a way to support people who are working on what they call public goods, right? So the kind of work on like really fundamental Ethereum infrastructure, the kind of stuff that people often do pro bono that goes without any kind of reward or salary. Optimism has a grants program to try identify people who are doing that kind of work and compensate them for it. So some of the revenue from Base will be going towards that. There was I don't know if you call it funny, but on the website where they had made the announcement about Base, they initially said that 20% of the fee revenue would go toward Optimism, but that number has since been removed because apparently they are still trying to nail down the specifics. And
interesting.
Somebody maybe jumped the gun with saying 20%. So
okay,
yeah, that's how that works.
Do you think the biggest loser from this announcement was Arbitrum?
I don't know. I mean, I guess it remains to be seen. So I spoke to Jesse Pollack, the lead developer at Coinbase, who, his team was the one to build out Base. And I also spoke to one of Optimism's co-founders, and they're both talking about this idea of the super chain, a future where L2 blockchains don't compete, they collaborate, they work on a shared infrastructure. And Coinbase and Optimism, they're obviously collaborating. How far that collaboration takes them, how powerful it makes the technology, that remains to be seen. At the end of the day, every L2 is competing for users, for transaction volume. So, if the technology really improves through this collaboration, if it starts to attract more builders, better applications, then yeah, I have no idea whether that's going to happen or not. I actually spoke to Arbitrum's CEO about this, and it was his opinion that the notion that the various companies building layer 2 blockchains right now would set aside their differences and collaborate and try to come up with a shared standard was a bit presumptive, right? His take is that, well, we're all building great technology. We've got a lot of different approaches to this, and it's not really fair to suggest that we should all kind of join hands and find a way to kind of become one super company or federation of companies rather than competitors. Everybody kind of they've chosen their route. They have faith that that's the best way to approach it. Arbitrum thinks that its technology is far and away the most performant in the L2 space, and it's that idea of collaboration. I think it's not clear to me yet how that comes about.
Yeah, that's why I think Coinbase, such a huge company, going with Optimism as its partner in this, it really kind of raises the stakes for Arbitrum, and probably will make it harder for it to maintain its lead in the space. And then of course we have the CK rollups based L2s coming into play very soon. So we'll see. I mean, everyone's been waiting for kind of these CK based solutions, and apparently it is. I don't know. I many people say it's better tech, so we'll see. I don't know. I don't know if like Coinbase will stick with Optimism, or will they even switch to CK once that's live.
Yeah, well, It's interesting. So Optimism and Arbitrum, they have almost all of the market share right now in the L2 race. They're the big boys, right? Arbitrum, I think, has around 60%. Optimism has the next 20% of the market share. So they both use optimistic rollup technology. That's one way to scale Ethereum. The other is with, as you mentioned, zero knowledge technology. And both Arbitrum and Optimism say, well, we're ready to adopt zero knowledge technology when it's mature enough. We like our platforms are flexible. We can plug that in once it's ready, but it's not ready right now. In fact, Jesse Pollock, again, the developer at Coinbase, told me, well, we chose Optimism in part because it's out there, it's open source, anybody can use it, but also we like that the OP stack is highly modular, that we can plug in zero knowledge proofs, once that technology matures.
Yeah, I mean, we should probably move to the next topic, but I don't know. It seems like all these other projects have been building their CK rollups for years. I don't know how feasible it will be for this Optimism based projects to just like plug in a CK rollup. So like it seems like it's more complex than that, but
yeah,
we'll see. All right, so yeah, I mean, super interesting development in the L2 world with Coinbase coming into play, and this is another story of rivalries, but we reported on how actually, yeah, we had this just like as we're kind of leaving the L2 story, we also had this story on Arbitrum passing Ethereum in terms of number of transactions. So just, and this, it was also Alex's story. So just, another L2 related development this week. Pretty interesting. First time an L2 has surpassed Ethereum. So just like goes to show all the activity that's happening on that network. And then, as I was saying, here's another kind of story about rivalries, OpenSea versus Blur. Blur is this NFT startup that's really gaining market share very quickly. Owen, you reported on this this week. What's going on?
Sure. So I'm sorry, guys. I have a bit of a cold this week. But I mean, basically, Blur has emerged at some point last year, and they've kind of been the main thorn in OpenSea's side, and OpenSea was, far and away the most successful NFT marketplace for a while, and Blur has been one of those no trading, they don't charge fees platforms. They've been dangling this airdrop, and they just completed their airdrop last week, or the first stage of it, and that really kind of wrenched up their market share, which is pretty much tied with OpenSea's going into the airdrop, and basically it just took things up a notch and took Blur over 70% of daily trading volume on Ethereum, and they just haven't looked back since. And I mean, the article, we've been covering Blur a fair amount, but we have, so OpenSea countered this move last Friday when they said that they were about to drop fees when they usually take a 2.5% cut, and they also enforced royalties. And I'm still a little shaky on these details. I sometimes feel like the phrasing is not as clear as it could be, but that's my job to understand. But I think they're starting to wrench down royalties to the ones that they're enforcing. Because remember, OpenSea has been responsible for enforcing these royalties. And I think at a high level, they basically eliminated that. And they're saying, no, we're only going to support up to 0.5% royalties. And so, yeah, I mean, it was just interesting. It was notable that despite, I don't know, OpenSea like made this like desperate move, and Blur has continued to dominate since. And Yeah, I mean, it's interesting. I talked to a couple, I talked to Hill Dobby, who's kind of has some of the biggest dashboards on Dune. And, he was just like, yeah, that the UX is better. And also Blur still has more airdrops on the way. So people are also incentivized to continue to use the platform. So yeah, I mean, it's crazy. And I mean, some people are saying, yeah, but like actually Blur only has like 500 traders are accounting for, I think like 50% of the volume, which is crazy. And that may well be true. So yeah, but I mean, it's just a very obvious competition story and exciting. I mean, I thought it was kind of dramatic that the founder of Blur doxed himself yesterday after, I don't know. I thought of like a gladiator, like taking off a helmet, it was just like, he
Oh, you
won.
should have put that line in the story.
I thought that was too corny.
No, I love it. It's great.
Yeah. So, I mean, I thought, yeah. So, I mean, yeah, it's been dramatic. I mean, and people do say that, like Blur has, better liquidity. You can get a little better prices. The UX is better. But again, just the stark contrast of like the platform styles too, it's like OpenSea has been very much, as we talked about, I think last week, very much like the creators platform, and Blur has branded itself very much as the traders platform. And, I think it's interesting to see right now the traders platform is easily winning and royalties have taken a huge bash. Like some people are saying like this is the end of royalties.
I thought you did a nice job on the reporting because you raised the issue of how sustainable the Blur model will be. I mean, they're getting this really great pop right now. How much of that is attributable to the airdrop and the very savvy, hey, another one's coming. So hang in there. The incentives continue. And you highlighted all of those issues in your reporting, which is great. But that is the major question: is Blur running really hot and fast right now, and they're just going to burn through their fuel pretty quickly, and or not? I mean, it's hard to say. But what's kind of interesting is that they've planted the flag, right? They've established their brand so quickly. They've established very positive word of mouth, again, as your reporting showed. It always helps when your UX is rocking, right? Yeah. And OpenSea, I mean, this is good for them. I mean, competition's always good. And if this forces OpenSea to scramble and brainstorm and come up with something new and novel and interesting, then users, investors, and hopefully creators will all be the better for it.
Yeah, it's the question of like crypto application economics is so interesting to me, right? Because it's like the people who are using these applications are so not normie, right? Like it's such a small subset of the population that's like willing to go through the effort of trading, for example, on a decentralized exchange and trying to juice it, the user base. It's like, so often we see companies that have some kind of incentives or the promise of an airdrop, and there are a lot of people who are farming those incentives or performing activities on a particular blockchain in the hope that they qualify for an airdrop later. It's like, oftentimes that vanishes once the promise of free money goes away. And it's, I mean, I know that we moved on from this, but real quick, it's something that I touched on in the Arbitrum story. The Arbitrum plans on at some point launching a token. When that happens is anybody's guess. It doesn't seem like it's anytime soon, but when Optimism, their competitor, launched their own token last year, I mean, it was like hundreds of millions of tokens that were instantly trading at about $1.40, right? So that was like $200 million worth of free money that was just injected into the crypto ecosystem. And, with Arbitrum's transaction volume soaring, the question is, is this just people who want to get a slice of another $200 million, subsidy, or is it organic? And I mean, it seems like the answer is actually the latter, which is rare in in this case.
Yeah. No, I mean, it'll be interesting to see. I mean, yeah, as Ed said too, yeah, the sustainability remains to be seen, and I'm not savvy enough to speak to whether Blur represents real adoption. I mean, we covered that story at the end of last year, saying that or I think maybe that was this year, but saying 50% of the trading volume, NFT trading volume in 2022 was wash trading. I mean, that was Hill Dobby also who wrote that. So, it's just I don't know. This tweet has been resonating me. It's you can build products for crypto Twitter, or you can build it for the world. And that one I just think about all the time for all these things where it's I don't know, there's this whole dramatic, sexy battle going on, and then but it's all on Twitter. I don't know. And there aren't just enough people there to really actually sustain any of these businesses. So
I think that's a really great point because, right now, I mean, you look at all this is clearly made for this very specific and niche group of people, right? Blur. I mean, all these aesthetics, this, I think just a mainstream, non-crypto person comes to this website and it's a little bit intimidating. I don't know, if they would know where to start, faster sweeping. What even is that? Who will understand that? Total GMV.
Trade faster. It's
I thought this was supposed to be about, collectibles. Why? I mean, this is clearly, you guys were saying, made for traders. And it's obviously right now, that's what NFTs are about. And, Blur taking over OpenSea so quickly proves that, right now, NFTs, their main use case is trading. It's people kind of flipping them over and it is what it is. And then, if you go to OpenSea, it is more kind of, I think, targeted to a more general audience. And you're right, it's kind of highlighting the art, the collections more than kind of the trading aspect. But I think that's kind of causing it to lose some of its market share. It's so interesting. And I think whether projects are able to retain users after the airdrop depends on how good the actual product is. So I think in the end, airdrops are marketing schemes. It's okay, you spend money on airdrop or you spend it on ads. In crypto, it's, your marketing campaign is doing an airdrop. But in the end, if users stick around, that will depend on how useful the actual product is. If they have something that's really the fastest marketplace they claim, and the UX is better and floors are lower and all of these claims, then maybe they do get to keep the users that they attracted with the airdrop. But I think that's kind of the big question.
Yeah, we have a couple. I guess Kyle said a couple things. Alex, you also got a nice compliment. But Kyle just said, reminds me of what Binance did to Coinbase, what Blur did to OS. And I think that is interesting. I think the Blur co-founder said that on record, that he wants to be the Binance of NFTs. So we'll have to see. And Kyle also said that OpenSea was intimidating for his mom. So shout out Kyle's mom.
Thanks, Kyle, for the comments. And I had missed this one. This is great. Thanks, John. He said that we're his favorite crypto channel on YouTube, and said he especially likes Alex's report. So thanks so much, John, and everyone watching. Great. Okay, so more more NFT related news. This is, I think we had reported. I feel like we've reported on this before. Uniswap coming to kind of the NFT game. I know this is Tarang's story, but who can?
Yeah, I can just do. I mean, a quick. I mean, the high level is that Uniswap is allowing you to buy NFTs with ERC20 tokens, which are tokens which basically aren't Ethereum built on the standard. So that could be Uni tokens or 0x tokens or what have you, and saying you can directly buy NFTs with any of those tokens. So
do Xerox have tokens?
What?
Does Xerox have tokens?
0x has. Sorry, that's like a 2017 reference. Oh no, not Xerox. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
No.
I was
maybe,
like, wow.
Maybe someday. Yeah.
Like, talk about the, add blockchain to your name and get a boost in your share price idea.
Right.
Anyway, sorry.
Yeah. No. So I mean, basically, yes. There, and in so doing, with the allowing people to buy with any ERC20 token, they're making it easier to buy NFTs as opposed to having that intermediate step, which is annoying. It's like, do CAPTCHAs to log into a website or something. So they took that away. And yeah, I mean, I was surprised to see that, the platform has not been doing so hot in terms of trading volume. Like, I mean, it seems like I think it was launched in November, and then here, let me pull it up. But yeah, I mean, the amount of transactions, I think, using Uniswap's aggregator in the marketplace is in the double digits. So less than 100 transactions a day.
Wow.
Which is not good. Yeah, it looks like it's kind of trended down, and Jesus, I don't know if it's that bad. But
can you send the link?
Yeah. I'll send it. Yeah, I wonder if this is 1 second.
Maybe on the private chat, and then I'll pull it up so everyone can see.
Okay.
But yeah, surprising that the Uniswap NFT marketplace hasn't been doing so well. It is kind of the place most people go to trade in DeFi. So you would think that an NFT marketplace on Uniswap would do well. Yeah. Maybe that's what happens with Coinbase. Maybe kind of these kind of big players entering a new, area isn't always, a winning strategy.
Yeah, it is interesting that I feel like Blur has done so well, as an NFT first platform, and then people going from these fungible tokens. It seems like that you make a good point. Coinbase struggled, as did Uniswap. Yeah, you see the transactions, down.
Wow.
Down and to the right.
Interesting. I wonder how much lower they are too, because Uniswap acquired an NFT aggregator.
Genie.
And turned it into the Uniswap NFT marketplace. So I wonder if when they sunsetted that brand or IP, I wonder if that cost them.
I got you. Yeah. Restarting with.
Yeah, if people were just kind of Genie brand loyal and.
Maybe.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. No, it's a good question.
So maybe, I don't know, we'll see if this move to open to trading for more tokens against NFTs, maybe this helps volume. We'll see. And then yet another NFT story. This is super interesting, and you see here on our trending post, it's at the top of the list, so people are interested in this. It's pretty surprising. Activity picking up on Bitcoin. And Owen, this was your story.
So basically this happened. I mean, I think he launched it on January 31st, and the basic idea is at a super high level. The developer is in Oakland. I think he was hosting a meetup. I'd like to meet him, but he figured out a way to do what he calls inscribe individual Satoshis, which are the smallest unit of Bitcoin, with an arbitrary bit of content. And so at a super high level, it's on one hand, these Satoshis are fungible and they're just portions of Bitcoin, but now they can also be inscribed with data. So it's kind of like an NFT. He doesn't quite want to say that. They're calling it a digital artifact. But, but it's very interesting. I mean, just because Bitcoin has been so quiet and it's been so off the radar, and it's not thought of as a a revolutionary product anymore in a lot of ways. And so it was just interesting kind of seeing that excitement spill over. And I talked to Manib of Stacks, which is like one of the major layers kind of building on Bitcoin and using Bitcoin as for security. And yeah, it's just interesting kind of getting his take on like all the excitement that like it felt like new things could happen on Bitcoin, which people haven't felt for a while. And I did agree that he was like, he did say just that like there's something magical about the idea of storing a piece of content like that should be on the Bitcoin blockchain as long as Bitcoin exists. And I mean, that is kind of magic and kind of feels more straightforward than some of the more complicated solutions like Filecoin or something. So yeah, I mean, that's the basic level. And obviously that excitement kind of spilled over into Stacks token price. And, you know, we'll have to see if the momentum is sustained. Like I saw that maybe people were like not as interested in ordinals late this week as they were last week. So, I mean, per usual, there's always something hot. Can it sustain? But yeah, I mean, I just thought it was interesting, this whole idea of like, yeah, building on Bitcoin, like make Bitcoin fun again. And I mean, I think some people were really angry at the developer for figuring out how to do this because it wasn't like Bitcoin was designed to be able to do this. So he said he had like gotten, I mean, like threats of various kinds because he kind of had imbued Bitcoin with like a new functionality that maybe it's a, you know, swath of creators didn't really intend. So
that's so weird about Bitcoiners. I'll never understand, you know, how protective they are, that they don't want anything to touch kind of, you know, just like Bitcoin as gold or as money and nothing else. Anyways, I think it's exciting to see new developments happening.
Yeah, totally.
Cool. And then, you know, we're not getting away from regulatory news this week. It's been a constant, and this was, you know, this question of, we've seen the SEC and other US regulators say that everything in crypto is probably a security, and NFTs are not an exception, it looks like. So what's happening here with Dapper Labs?
So Dapper Labs has issued these collectibles, NBA Top Shots. It's like it's an NFT that's a video of like famous highlights from the NBA. And the idea behind it is kind of that it's like it's a collectible, that it's like a trading card or something. Several owners of these NBA Top Shot moments, or whatever they're called, they're alleging that they own securities. Basically, they're suing Dapper Labs, saying that Dapper Labs is selling an unregistered security. So the news this week was just that the judge in this case allowed the lawsuit to move forward. He didn't issue a ruling on this. He just said, yeah, there is some merit to this, and we're going to take this to the next step and really kind of figure it out, right? And in that, well, you know, like you could convince me that these are backed securities. So our colleague Sam Hake, he was the one to report this story, and he spoke to a lawyer and a Dapper Labs equity holder, this guy Darren Heitner, who said that, like, I mean, yeah, fundamentally these are collectibles, and, you know, just like Pokemon cards, you know, that doesn't necessarily mean that they're securities. I mean, nobody thinks that Pokemon cards are securities. The SEC certainly hasn't forced Nintendo to register them as such. But he said that the case could kind of hinge on whether Dapper, which has issued these NFTs, has a, quote, vested interest in the buying and selling of these NFTs, and whether it contains any control over the items that are transacted on its platform. So, you know, something that the plaintiffs point out is that you can't take these NFTs and trade them on other blockchains. They have to use the Flow blockchain. And, you know, Dapper has an interest in these staying on the Flow blockchain. It gets, percentage of the transaction fees for trading and buying and selling these NFTs. So it's like, I don't know to what degree a ruling in this case would apply to other NFT collections, but it's another part of this whole regulatory. I don't want to use the word onslaught. Maybe that's too alarmist, but it just this kind of like this wave of SEC enforcement actions, lawsuits, regulatory guidance that are really trying to shoehorn crypto into the existing financial regulatory world, I guess.
Right.
Yeah, just a couple of points. I think it's very important that this is a court case and not a regulatory action.
Right.
This isn't the regulators have nothing to do with this, so it'll go to a jury if it goes to trial, unless both parties agree to make it a bench trial. But it would probably go to a jury. And one of the interesting differences is that using the Pokemon cards or basketball or baseball cards analogy, is that when you own baseball cards, you're a collector. Typically, if you want to trade them, you either do it in a bilateral relationship with another trader, or you take them to a show. Take them to a baseball card show, memorabilia show, and you kind of display them, and somebody might want to buy them, or you might want to trade them for somebody else. It's a very informal secondary market. But the important thing is that it's open, it's public. Anybody can take part who's there, who negotiates with the owner. And Alex, you made the point that this is all being conducted on this Flow blockchain. And so you have this control by a particular entity, in this instance, Dapper Labs. And I think that would play a very interesting role in the case if it were to go to a jury, because they would have to explore whether that makes it more like a security or less like a security.
Yeah, and what's like, it's so funny because it's like, they have to do it on Flow. They can't just show up at a trade show. And so Flow is in this sense a middleman, but it's also a blockchain. And the whole point of a blockchain is that it enables that kind of peer-to-peer transacting digitally, right?
That's
and
right.
So I don't know, maybe the judge digs into how centralized Flow is now. And, I'm really interested.
Sam did note in his story that the judge went out of his way, U.S. District Court judge went out of his way to kind of say, just in this dismissal stage of the proceedings, that please don't interpret my comments as some kind of blanket application for all NFTs. If for some reason this particular NFT is found to be a security for the purposes of this case, this doesn't mean every NFT would be a security. So it's interesting that the judge kind of was conscientious enough to make that very nuanced point. Right. And again, this is a very preliminary stage in this legal proceeding. And then one other note I would just make is that cases like this typically settle. So for all of the headlines and so forth that it's making now, or the alarm in some quarters, they could end up settling, and then it doesn't mean anything.
Yeah, I think it's interesting to watch, because it kind of gives you a sense of what the arguments are from both sides. What could make an NFT a security? Does centralization matter? Even if the case doesn't move forward, I think it kind of provides more context to other projects, and just guidance on like how to think about their own projects and how kind of in line they are. But we'll see whether it moves forward. And then speaking of securities, Alex, you had this really interesting story about a platform that actually went through all the steps to register, it looks like, and offer tokenized versions of tech stocks, which has been, it's been a use case that's been promoted forever for crypto. And even Do Kwon, infamous Do Kwon now, of Terra and Luna, one of like the Terra's ecosystem projects was Mirror. Do you guys remember? And that was all about exactly this. But then I think he had to shut it down because of regulatory concerns. Because like this is very clearly something that you need approval for. Just doing this like mirrored shares. But it looks like now there's a legit way to buy tech shares with crypto. So what's this about?
Yeah, to be clear, not in the US. This product is a German company that's done this work, that has received approval from European regulators, and just given the situation in the US and the lack of clarity about doing this kind of thing, and regulators being kind of stubborn about, well, we have no plans on providing that clarity anytime soon. You'll just have to figure out what the rules are as we sue ne'er-do-wells. You can't buy these tokenized stocks in the US, but Swarm, the German company, after like about 10 months of talking to regulators and actually just working on the tech, come out with tokenized Apple stocks, Tesla stocks, and treasury bond ETFs. And it's part of that promise of DeFi, right? The idea that if you can just tokenize things, then you can really bring the traditional financial world into the 21st century. And so something that I spoke to the co-founders of the company, and something that they noted that I thought was really interesting is just the idea that what they're doing is creating, blocks that you can play with now in the DeFi ecosystem. And so there's this quote from one of the co-founders who says, you're basically mobilizing an asset by making it more flexible, more agile, more fractionalizable, and you're democratizing the way that people can build markets around them. These are DeFi compatible. You can, for example, borrow DAI against them. You can use them in blending protocols, and so it's cool, right? You're bringing a new asset class that isn't super tightly correlated with existing crypto assets onto the blockchain. When like everything in crypto just kind of moves up or down in lockstep. And while there's correlation between crypto and the stock market, especially tech stocks, that correlation isn't quite as tight. And, as one of the co-founders pointed out, the market capitalization of Apple is larger than crypto, just the concept. So you're bringing a whole new, way to borrow and lend and hedge into crypto finance. And I think that's really interesting. And I'm interested in seeing how many people end up using this.
Yeah, I think it's it opens up a really interesting dimension in the cryptocurrency industry on product design, and more specifically in DeFi. And we've seen this happen on Wall Street in particular, and actually in Paris. The French are very good at this, creating new types of financial products, albeit they're all securities or derivatives, of course. But that's what they're doing. It reminds me of the invention of the exchange traded fund in the 1980s. That was a new type of financial product that was invented off the back of the mutual fund, pegged to indices, and it was super cheap because it was passive and automated. And it opened up an entirely new market. I want to say audience, but an entirely new user base. It all of a sudden everyone could buy into the stock market in a really cheap and really easy way. And those ETFs were representations of other underlying securities, whether it was the S&P 500 or it was oil futures or gold futures, etc. And so I think what the Swarm guys are doing and their counterparts at other firms are doing, and of course in a very regulated fashion, is they are experimenting with product design. They're using the technology, DeFi technology, to say, hey, we can build a better mousetrap. And if indeed that mousetrap becomes more accessible because it's cheaper, that's what remains to be seen. Like, we don't know if that is going to happen. Are these products going to be for very sophisticated, accredited investors who are doing all sorts of wild arbitrage between, the tokenized version and the real version? Is that the game? If that's the case, then that's obviously a very niche audience.
Well, so,
but if this does something else and becomes more accessible to a larger marketplace, that's exactly the kind of application that DeFi needs if it's going to be adopted.
I think that latter scenario, that's the hope here, right? So it's available to institutional and retail investors. The degree to which retail investors actually buy in remains to be seen. But one of the points that they make is that this is a win for accessibility. Like, Apple stock is expensive. If you can fractionalize it, then you can let people buy into Apple, go long on Apple, without having to shell out whatever the cost of a single share.
Or waiting for the company to do it itself.
And not only that, but like, it's usually only available Apple stock or Tesla stock or whatever US stocks. They're mostly available to the US market. Like, you have to be very sophisticated and have a US bank account to even buy those stocks outside of the US.
Very good.
So point. That's and it's ironic that this company is outside of the US, offering US stocks. But I mean, that's exactly the point, right? It's like, when you have these global distributed networks, you're able to do that. You're able to offer financial products without, regardless of where you're based. So,
but it also speaks to the uncertainty around the US regulatory environment, Alex, as you touched on, because here you have a company that went knocking on the door of BaFin, the German financial regulator, and said, please regulate us. We want to be regulated. They worked with BaFin. I think they ended up with like 4 or 5 different licenses. I mean, BaFin, they're no slouches. I mean, this is Germany. They're pretty strict. And Swarm went ahead and got, regulated. So institutions can come in, all the KYC, AML, everything is all there. They still don't sell in the US. They're like not dipping their toe in the US at this time, which kind of says something about just the uncertainty in the US space right now.
Yeah, absolutely. And it goes to show, like, we were talking about this last week. It's, many crypto companies want to register and follow the rules in the US, but they're just not allowed to. So when you have regulators that actually work with players in the space, you get this type of innovation, this platform that's opening up this really exciting space and, allowing people to trade really innovative companies. But, you can't do that.
One last point on that note for me, just it like, when FTX collapsed and everybody was pulling their hair out saying, oh, you have no idea how far back this is going to set the industry. I kind of understood that on a theoretical level, right? Reputational damage, that's not great. But that kind of came home to me a week or two ago when I was working on a story about this, again, regulatory push in the US, and former SEC attorney was telling me, look, what politician, what regulator is going to want to make it easier for crypto after what happened to FTX? Because in the event that something like this happens again, do they want to be the person, the politician, the regulator who people can point to and say, you did this, this is your fault? And it's like, how reasonable that fear is, it exists. Nobody wants to be seen as holding water for the next FTX, whatever that might be.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, it's really unfortunate.
Just to clarify about Swarm, so can non-US residents, they can just like, can they like, how do they, I mean, do we know like how they get the Apple stock or something? Like, can you, is it like an ERC20?
Can't buy. Can't. Nope.
Wait, what do you mean?
He's asking about non-US residents.
Non-US.
Oh, forgive me.
Okay. Yeah. Non-US. Well, I'm just saying, like,
non-US, you just open an account
with Swarm.
Yeah.
Okay. And then you have it, and then you could like market make on Uniswap with, like, could you provide liquidity? Do we know, like, to like an ETH Apple pair?
Uniswap is permissionless, so I would assume that that's possible if somebody was willing to do that.
Yeah, that would be crazy. I mean, it'd be crazy to like see that on-chain data.
ETH Apple pair.
Yeah. Something to keep an eye on. You know, if it really starts picking up steam, I'm really looking forward to doing a follow-up on this.
Totally. Yeah. If like Aave like allows people to like collateralize their Apple stock, like if they clear that would be, I mean, yeah, just very interesting. So.
Yeah, so we'll be keeping an eye on how this develops for sure. And also we had this related op-ed this week talking about, tokenizing real world assets. So, you guys should check it out. It's an interesting one by Philip Piper. And then to wrap up today's live stream, really interesting story by Owen on WorldCoin. This just super fascinating project. I don't know. It's like I think a lot of people in this space were really freaked out by this orb that scans your retina when it first launched. I think it launched last year. But I don't know. Maybe there's something to it. Oh, and what did you find?
I mean, like everyone, I was just fascinated by the orb. And this, he did say, he was like, "Look, man, like I was brought on after they decided on the orb, so he kind of suggested, don't blame me." Yeah, I mean, I've been very excited by this, and I kind of have tried to explain to people, and I don't know where to start exactly. But basically, like, this was introduced in October 2021. Like Sam Altman introduced it, who is either the founder or the co-founder of OpenAI, as well as the co-founder of WorldCoin. And he was just like pretty ripped apart on Twitter at the time, and kind of understandably so. I mean, it just seems so scary. You like look into this orb, it just seems like viscerally,
unsettling.
Yeah, you're just like, and I mean, you could say like, yeah, we have like cameras all around us. Like, how different is this? But it's still just like the aesthetics of it are kind of scary. So anyways, I mean, I was just fascinated because, since then, Rewind, WorldCoin got panned, on Twitter, and a couple articles like took some shots at WorldCoin, and they've been pretty quiet since. But since then, we've had ChatGPT launch, I think about 3 months ago, and kind of suggest or hint to the world that very big things are coming with AI. And so I thought, like, it's just crazy that, like I talked to the CEO, and he was like, he talks to Sam multiple times a week. So they're very abreast of what's happening with AI. And I think one of the things that AI is going to challenge is the idea of personhood, especially online. And it's going to be potentially very hard to establish who's real and who's not. If you can like automate tweets and automate even the creation of accounts on websites and on blockchains. So yeah, I mean, that was kind of the basis for our conversation. And that they announced plans to decentralize last week, which is like very complicated because the WorldCoin project has, they have this biometric aspect to it, which gives you this kind of non-fungible ID, which will be attached to your personhood. They have a coin which they're going to distribute using that ID to prevent gamification, and they have an app, a non-custodial app, so you can supposedly trade your WorldCoin and maybe other assets and maybe use it for payment or something. So it's very ambitious and wide-ranging. So yeah, I mean, and they announced plans to decentralize, which sound good. They're open sourcing some of the hardware. And I mean, but it's just really hard because they have like boots on the ground people, right? They have people in Portugal Africa, like scanning. I think in Kenya, I want to say, and maybe kind of.
I know that the like one of the first test places, countries was Chile.
Oh, really?
And yeah, and I had like, friends say like, hey, there's this weird crypto project by my subway station. And it was like, WorldCoin. Yeah.
What was their take? Were they just like, were they also skeptical? Or like,
yeah, they're like, what is this weird thing?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So anyway, yeah, I mean, it's so they announced plans to decentralize. It's very hard because they have hardware involved and like a physical operation. So I mean, the details of that decentralization, I think, are kind of scarce, and it seems hard. They said they worked with Maker, who has maybe been the most successful at decentralizing, but yeah, I mean, it's just I'm sorry if I don't explain it that well. I get it's kind of exciting, but also details are somewhat scarce. But like it's interesting that they're kind of, I think they're very not building for crypto Twitter. Like they said they're the #1 crypto app in Portugal. So it's like they're operating in a different space kind of, and it'll be interesting to see what happens as AI develops, and like if this idea of like establishing digital personhood through biometrics like takes hold, and it's like they're offered either the ability to establish that like through the government or through some decentralized system. Like people may need to resort to using their system, but it's complicated and scary. And Edward Snowden has criticized using biometrics, generally, as have many people. So yeah, I mean, ongoing. Yeah.
Is the idea that, okay, so that they want to link your, biometric information to your ID and kind of have that downloaded to like their own, do they have their own blockchain, or are they building on
they're not
somewhere?
Clear. I asked them about that. Like I think they are planning to run on Ethereum in some sense. But yeah, I mean, like the more I talk about it, the more I realize like the details are so sketchy and it seems so like such a wide ranging protocol. But basically the idea is that like, I think it's like a new primitive. I think they're trying to make soul-bound tokens not attached to a crypto wallet, but they're trying to make it attached to this whole, like that you'll have a hash, which will be your digital personhood, which will be another thing to work with. And I mean, like I tried to build a voting app years ago, and I was like, yeah, like how do you get around these Sybil problems? So I can see the importance of a decentralized ID, whether biometrics are the way to do that, I'm not sure.
And then how does AI play into all this? I didn't get that.
No, totally. I mean, so that's also like, I think one suggestion, which also caught my eye when we were talking, he was like, there are people saying like an AI organization might make so much money that they need to distribute the profits in some way and like commit to distributing those profits in order to as part of like I don't know how like Zuckerberg like commits to like 1% for X or whatever. Like an AI company would have to say like we have some kind of windfall clause, they called it, University of Oxford, if they have these insane profits, which could be up to like 1% of the world's GDP. Yeah, like that. Then this could be a mechanism by which to distribute that. And the research at the university said like there isn't as of yet a good way to potentially.
You got, I think Owen got
obvious. Oh, can you guys not hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Okay, yeah, just like the association with OpenAI and the obvious success they've had with ChatGPT, it's like it's not hard to imagine that there's some, and again, this is like vague and speculative, but just like that there might be some way where if OpenAI really like runs away with profits in a certain sense, and if they have a huge lead, like I don't know, is WorldCoin the way with which OpenAI distributes those profits? Like I don't know. So yeah, it's
crazy that Sam Altman is saying like, I'm gonna make so much money with OpenAI that maybe WorldCoin will be a way to just like give back a little bit, like 1% of that.
to clarify, that was not him that said that. It was another.
No, I know.
Yeah, but it's I don't know, pretty. It's out of my wheelhouse. It's pretty space age stuff, but worth keeping an eye on, I think, for sure.
Yeah, it's a crazy story, and I don't know, I'm still skeptical. It's like when something is so hard to explain, and the details are so kind of vague.
Yeah,
It just it just makes me skeptical, but
totally.
Definitely fascinating. And it's like sometimes these like crazy ideas end up working out. Like they are definitely thinking out of the box, and
Yeah.
maybe it is what we need to finally solve this decentralized identity problem.
Yeah.
So those were the biggest stories we covered this week in DeFi and crypto. Lots happening as always, super interesting. Even in the bear, the space doesn't stop. So what I don't know, do you guys want to add anything that you thought was interesting this week, or have we covered all of it?
I'm good. This was a lot.
Yeah, it was a lot.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thanks everyone who joined us. Thanks, Kyle, V for Head, Gojita, Abdullah, Diego, Felipe. Sorry if I'm missing anyone, but thank you for. And John Owens with the very kind comment, Pablo. Everyone who joined us on the comments, and hope to see you all next week. And thanks, Ed, Owen, and Alex for your great reporting.
Always.
Bye, guys.
All right.
See ya.
See ya.